Good morning. Our first speaker, Misti Burmeister, is well known for her passion and dedication to effective leadership. In fact, she's the who's who of leading across organizations and generations. She started her speaking career with $37 to her name and a passion for increasing successful communication between generations in the workplace. Today, she's nationally recognized industry expert, highly sought-after speaker, and the author of the Washington Post bestseller, From Boomers to Bloggers. Misti will demonstrate effective strategies for getting the most out of each person on your team across generations. Please welcome Misti and the bridge between generations, Misti.
Thank you. Thank you. I paid him to say that. You can pick up your payment later. Good morning.
Good morning.
For breakfast, I eat Jim wanted to know. No, I'm not giving away the answer. You're all going to have to get to know him more to find out what I have for breakfast, other than eggs and bacon and toast. Yummy. There aren't any young professionals out there, are there? Oh, good, because we're annoying. No, really, we are. We're impatient, unwilling to pay our dues. We lack responsibility. We want it all right now without having to do anything. In fact, we say, I showed up. Now where's my trophy? There aren't any seasoned professionals out there, are there? Oh, good, because they, on the other hand, are irritating. All they ever say is, pay your dues. They hoard information. They're reluctant to change. They have a process in place for everything. These are two of my most favorite soap operas. I call them the young and the restless and the old and the breathless. They're breathless because they're tired of trying to explain why there's a good reason for that process. They're restless because they're young. And if it's not because they're young, it's because they're tired of trying to explain why there's a good reason. No, that's not what it is. If it's not because they're young, it's because they're still excited about the mission of your organization. Here at NASA IT, your mission is of national importance and international influence. Your work with the technology of the agency, maintaining 10 centers, ensuring security and innovating the way information is shared, both within NASA and to the public, upholds NASA's overarching vision to understand and protect our home planet, to explore the universe and search for life, and to inspire the next generation of explorers. You have at your disposal both seasoned professionals with knowledge and experience and young professionals eager to learn and prove their own astute knowledge. It's exciting. It's also the perfect opportunity for irritation. As many of you know, the media, as many of you know, we know about this, right, guys? Yeah. There's a lot of talk these days, as there should be, about building a sustainable culture. One in which the wisdom from the past is both remembered and leveraged. Innovation and collaboration are encouraged every day. And our future leaders are both acknowledged, recognized, and cultivated. A sustainable culture is a direct result of mission-centric leadership. Such leadership is necessary for NASA IT and for every organization to thrive. So how do we build a mission-centric organization? There are three components. By keeping our eye on the mission and remembering how it was achieved in past successes. By ensuring that the talents and skills of every generation are utilized effectively. And by continuing to innovate while preparing the next generation of leaders to take over the mission. In the time that we have together today, I'm going to flesh out how mission-centric leadership nurtures a sustainable culture. By show of hands, how many in this room want at least one of the following three items? The feeling that what you do matters. Opportunities to grow and gain experiences. Some form of acknowledgement or recognition. Keep your hands up real high if you want at least one of the following three items. Get them up. Now look around. Keep them up. Now look around. We are more alike than we are different. Jennifer Deal out of the Center for Creative Leadership did outstanding research on this very topic of values and generations. As many of you know, the media has long latched onto the idea that each generation has different values. In her book, Retiring the Generation Gap, she debunks this myth. Lo and behold, we all want the same basic things. We simply express them differently. We all want opportunities to advance learning and development. Yes, even the older folks at NASA want to continue developing their skills. Respect and recognition, and a better quality of life. Despite the fact that we all really want the same basic things, there's conflict in the workplace between generations, right? Conflict, irritation. In fact, according to the Harvard Business Review, 61% of chief executives surveyed from 44 countries said they had trouble integrating younger employees. It's like in that YouTube video that many of you may have seen, put together by young professionals here at NASA, demonstrating their frustration at a perceived lack of interest in their ideas. Heather, a young contractor, gets shuttled around from office to office as she shares her revolutionary ideas about the shuttle. Meanwhile, the seasoned professionals were puzzled at why someone, especially a young contractor, would want to go against the grain. Somewhere there's a breakdown that has generations stepping on each other's toes at best and knocking each other over at worst, to the detriment of everyone, including NASA IT's mission and the mission of the entire agency. Jennifer Deal's report also examines the idea of loyalty as an expectation an organization has of its employees, which doesn't work unless the organization is willing to be equally loyal. Yes, it's annoying when those young professionals say goofy things like, "I want balance," or "I didn't get my degree to file paperwork." Now, I said if it was funny, you had to do what? I didn't get my degree to file paperwork. Or they say, "I know I've only been with the organization for less than a month, but listen to my ideas anyway." It's still critical to help those same young professionals gain the skills necessary to be successful. A recent survey by the Government Accountability Office and the Center for Human Capital Information confirms a crisis in human capital for government agencies. About 1/3 of federal agencies, that's 31% here at NASA, on board at the end of fiscal year 2007 became eligible to retire, leaving behind critical gaps in institutional knowledge, which could adversely affect each agency's ability to carry out its diverse missions and respond to national and international issues. Look around and imagine what the person sitting right beside you knows. The valuable knowledge and information in that person's brain. They're like, what? What knowledge? What brain? Now imagine the gap that would occur if they were to say just disappear. Now I know many of you are just kind of hoping they will disappear, but we won't go into that. Critical to the success of NASA IT's mission is a sharing of knowledge across agencies and across generations. While speaking in Madison, Wisconsin, anybody out there from Wisconsin? Anybody out there from Wisconsin? There's like 50 out there from Wisconsin. I was speaking to a group of 150 human resource professionals about this topic of leading across generations, when one of my audience members shouted out, "I don't care about developing the next generation of leaders, because if I do, they'll take my job." You could hear a pin drop after she shouted that out. It's very likely she wasn't the only person feeling that same way. So I asked her, "Do you care about the long-term success of your organization?" "Absolutely." "Okay, so what's your 3-year plan?" "I don't have one." What's your 6-month plan?" "To get through the next 6 months." Kind of like that, the audience laughed, almost as if they had that very same plan. So I asked her, how can you possibly get excited about sharing what you know if you have no plan in place for yourself? Silence followed up by curiosity. "How do I create a plan?" she asked. Mission-centric leaders have a vision for themselves, I believe, for themselves and their team. Looking forward, not thinking backward. Thinking forward, not looking backward. Looking forward, not looking backward. Such leadership is essential to creating the foundation of a sustainable culture. Something about a next slide that's coming up. Let me add value to your quest toward what really matters. Innovative IT solutions for NASA and a strong, sustainable leadership now and in the future. Something I believe that most leaders across agencies and organizations from public to private sectors want. We all really want the same basic things across the different generations. Mission-centric leaders have a vision for their team and for their organization. Such leadership, I already said that part, so I'm going to go into the next part now. While this is up here, I might as well talk about it since it's up here, right, guys? Yeah, we're going to go right into it. I'm much better now. I was at the, stop looking at that slide. While I was at the FDA a little while ago, the FDA was hired a contractor to build an emerging leader program. And this emerging leader program, in order to determine their success rate along the way, they put out surveys asking the participants, was it successful or was it not? The contractor surveyed each of the participants. Is it successful or is it not successful? And each of the participants were giving back surveys, and the surveys were critical of many of the presenters. Now, the presenters, as it turns out, some of them actually received good feedback from the surveys. As it turns out, these surveys, these presenters, actually facilitated dialogue, asked questions, and engaged the audience. Some of the folks that were in the audience, or that were the participants in the program, instead of listening to the person up front doing the presentation, they opted to use their BlackBerry and talk to one another rather than listen to the presenter present. And as a result, you can imagine that the seasoned professionals were a bit frustrated. But with funding on the line, they called and they asked for my assistance. And my first question I asked them is, what's working really well? And discovered that some of the presenters actually received good feedback on the evaluations. And as I mentioned before, those same presenters were the ones that asked questions and facilitated dialogue. So I suggested to her, you have the solution right there. Get your presenters to facilitate more and lecture less. And with that, she slammed her fist on the table. I am not here to entertain them. That was a perfect opportunity to refocus on the mission she set out to accomplish. So I asked her, what specifically are you here to accomplish? I am here to ensure that the next generation of leaders are fully equipped to lead the FDA. So for the remainder of that session, I encouraged her to remain focused on that mission. Because even with several generations in the program with different learning styles and different motivations, her focus on what she was trying to accomplish, the goal of effectively equipping the next generation of leaders, was a crucial component to the success of that program. Of course, emerging leaders want to have their voices heard. It makes sense. They want to contribute to the conversation. In order for her to successfully reach the goal that she set out to reach, meant that she needed to ensure that they got what they needed. What it really comes down to is what works and what doesn't work toward the accomplishment of the mission. Right? But instead, many leaders get tripped up in just staying in what doesn't work. NASA is on the cutting edge of this culture of inclusion. A recent post on the Open NASA blog, a blog started and maintained by Nick Skyland and Garrett Fitzpatrick. Are you guys out there anywhere? If you are, raise your hand. Got at least one here. Awesome. Stated that people want to be personally engaged. People want to see how they fit into the bigger picture. People of all ages want to be inspired. So that's our challenge. We call it participatory exploration, creating a government agency that engages the American public in its mission and inspires the next generation of explorers, no matter what they want to be when they grow up. Achieving such success is no doubt a team effort. A team dedicated to a greater vision, a vision established by an exceptional leader who keeps her eye on the ball. Young professionals need more grace and feedback. Seasoned professionals need young professionals to stay the course, show their commitment. What we really need is a mission-centric meeting in the middle where patience and drive come together. You want to see that just a minute longer, don't you? It's kind of cute, isn't it? Fortunately, we are not the first culture to experience a disconnect between generations. Back when we were just discovering the stars and moon as something other than mythology, friction between young and seasoned was evident. Socrates, the Greek philosopher and rabble-rouser, was an old-timer who understood the youth of Athens, who, like today's young professionals, wanted to be seen and heard, to contribute to the conversation. They wanted to work together to improve the world's first democracy. He made it his vocation to question authority, encourage self-knowledge above all else. He lived by a vision that all people were capable of truth and goodness, and he devoted his life to the fulfillment of this mission, getting others to see their potential. Socrates represents a mission-centric model of leadership. He had the self-confidence enough to know that he could not possibly know everything. He was, in fact, proclaimed the wisest man in Athens because, in his own words, I know nothing. Mission-centric leaders, it's amazing. Mission-centric leaders remain open to learning. They stay focused on the vision, and they seek feedback in an open forum. For Socrates, that meant the public square. For us today, it means Facebook, blogging, text messaging, and every now and again conferences like this. Socrates and his band of youthful followers came under severe scrutiny by the old guard of Athens. These established politicians didn't want anyone getting in the way of what they wanted. They weren't comfortable being questioned, never questioned themselves, and didn't take kindly to their authority being challenged. They represent an ego or a righteous model of leadership, the ones who think they know it all. Righteous leaders need to be seen as all-knowing, at the expense of innovation and ultimately the success of your organization. So who represents this mission-centric model of leadership? Your very own leader, Linda Curitan, does when she writes on her blog. Everybody keeps asking me about the latest reorganization here at NASA. In particular, the center CIOs now report to me. They keep saying, so isn't it nice that all the center CIOs now belong to you? The reality is there's not much truth to that. The reality is I now belong to all of them. Those are the words of a leader who keeps her eye on the ball rather than letting everything get cloudy and blurry with ego. Effective leaders own responsibility for their success, the success of their team, looking forward, not looking backward. Just like that, looking forward, not looking backward. Thinking forward, not looking backward. That's what's next to come, by the way, you guys. Mission-centric leaders listen to that seemingly crazy idea because they know it might be brilliant, and they want to keep the doors wide open to innovation. All the great feats of innovation. Robert Goddard's liquid-fueled rocket ship, the moon landing, the International Space Station, the Mars Pathfinder. None of this would have been possible without mission-centric leadership. Why would NASA IT be any different? Today's challenges call for inspiration. A recent report released by the Government Accountability Office stated that in the face of fiscal, security, and technological challenges, federal agencies will need to transform themselves. Critical to the success of this transformation are its employees, its human capital, and effective human capital management programs. In other words, good leadership is needed to be successful. Such leadership is created through continually developing the talents and skills of each person on your team, across generations, a concept often forgotten once a title is given. Consider John Quincy Adams' definition of leadership. If your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, you are a leader. Ask yourself right now, who am I inspiring to dream more, learn more, do more, be more, and become more? Notice the quote says inspire. Some people get that mixed up with demand. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm most inspired by the people who are out there doing, being, and becoming more themselves every day. Aren't you guys? Together, we're most inspired by that. Let's face it, regardless of generation, the leaders who attract the most dedicated, loyal, committed, mission-centric leaders are the ones who put the most time and resources into them and into themselves. I know a leader who who insists that his employees bring a pen and paper to every meeting, to take notes. And then he holds them accountable to their greater goals. Now, he used to patronize them by writing it all down on sticky notes for them, and then he would get frustrated when they didn't get the job done. Now that he's holding them to higher standards, both satisfaction and retention at this particular IT company has soared. It's like the writer Goethe said, treat people as if they are what they ought to be, and you help them to become what they're capable of being. Empower your people to own responsibility for their success, and they'll step up. Get annoyed at their lack of responsibility, do it all for them, and watch as they continue to annoy you. What kind of a leader do you want to be? A mission-centric one or an egocentric one? One who's dedicated to the mission, empowering yourself and your people, or one who's concerned about pecking order and paying dues? One who leaves a legacy, or one who thinks he looks good? One who makes inspired decisions, or one who makes them based on fear? If yesterday's NASA could inspire its leaders to walk on the moon, and today's leaders here at NASA are empowering the discovery of new worlds, think what tomorrow's leaders here at NASA will do here at home and beyond. Today's question is about how to engage each generation to continue protecting and understanding our home planet. It is not a question about what worked yesterday. It's a forward-thinking question about what's needed right now for success. An environment where both young and seasoned professionals work together toward the accomplishment of the mission. Mission-centric leadership begins with knowing yourself and ends with a community of leaders confident enough to do the same. Just like those small steps on the moon were leaps for mankind, the small steps made by leaders, and we're all leaders in this room, represent leaps for our organizations and consequently the world. I have been blessed in my life to know a model of this caliber of mission-centric leadership, my very own Socrates. This leader understood the raw power of belief, and he knew how to focus it. His name appropriately is Mr. Weiser, and he was my principal at Valley High School in Gilchrist, Colorado. Anyone out there from Colorado? There's about 100. Prior to meeting Mr. Weiser, my life was going down a disastrous path. My stubborn, hard-headed nature landed me in court many times and more fights than I care to remember. And it earned me a front row seat in special ed. Clearly, my energy and enthusiasm needed a more constructive outlet. I just had not yet found it. Previous to meeting Mr. Weiser, the folks at my previous two schools bought into the idea that I was stupid and consequently treated me as if it were true. It's the same when we assume that young professionals lacking polished business skills are incapable. It's equally true when we assume that seasoned professionals resistant to change are useless. As a part of my, I need some water, sorry guys. As a part of my enrollment in my new high school, my mother accompanied me to a meeting with Mr. Weiser, a meeting I will remember for a lifetime. As he sat behind his big wooden desk, hands folded together almost as if in prayer, as my mother explained about all the issues I'd had over the past, and the special programs I'd been enrolled in over the past 2 years. Meanwhile, I shrank in my seat, waiting for Mr. Weiser to tell me what special program I was going to need to go to that was going to be different from all the other students. But to my absolute shock, he calmly said, "Miss Burmeister, I think your daughter is quite normal." And I think she's going to get along just fine here in our regular courses. Now, I knew he'd heard it all, so he must have known something that neither my mom nor I knew. If he thought I was going to be successful in his school, then most certainly I would. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys. My grades were not stellar. If it didn't, fold up and fit in my back pocket, I didn't take it home with me and complete it. I did graduate and become a 3-time state champion in track. His words, his confidence in me changed my life. Now, I still found many ways to get myself in trouble, no doubt. But whenever it escalated to Mr. Weiser, he always insisted that the teacher or the coach take a greater responsibility for the success of their students or athletes. His confidence in me helped me to be confident in myself. My life would have turned out very differently had it not been for Mr. Weiser. Mission-centric leadership grounded in self-knowledge and an unwavering commitment to the vision he set out to accomplish. His mission was clear. That really is a picture of him. To get his students to graduation. Unwavering commitment to a mission and a vision much greater than himself. There are 3 keys to becoming a mission-centric leader capable of pulling out the very best in every person on your team. Know yourself. Know your team and your colleagues. What are they like? What are they up to? Where are they trying to go? What are they trying to accomplish? And know your mission. While presenting at one of these forums in Washington, D.C. recently, one of my audience members, it was a bit smaller, stood up, as often happens, and proclaimed, "When I was a young professional, all I wanted to do was prove myself. I wanted to know that I was doing a good job, and I wanted to understand where my career was going. These young professionals today, I don't get them. All they want to do is prove themselves, constant feedback, and a clear career path." I looked at him as if he had 2 heads. Let's see here. We have prove yourself, feedback, and a career path. The audience got real quiet, almost as if they were trying to digest what he just finished saying. So I asked him, did you hear what you just said? After a few moments, he got it. He had completely forgotten his own experience, and as a result, his ability to relate. It is in remembering that we create a bridge. Remembering that time, that time when we didn't know it all, when we didn't know where it was we were going or how we fit in. We've all felt that in some way before. Rediscover the passion that ignites your commitment. Doing so is essential to helping others find theirs, especially if that other is annoying or irritating. Admittedly, sometimes the communication abilities of our younger colleagues gets in the way of their capabilities. I've spent my fair share of time shaking my head in disbelief at how some of us young achievers approach certain situations, almost as if we wish to sabotage our chances from the get-go. I'm a perfect example. As a younger professional, I was so eager to prove what I knew, to prove what I was capable of, that I did a heap of unsolicited research and presented an hour-long PowerPoint presentation to my boss to show her how she could better utilize my talents and skills. I ended up with a boss who thought I should be on medication. I promptly resigned. Starting over from scratch, I needed to understand what had happened. So I channeled all that energy and enthusiasm, which of course I have no more of, into research on generational differences. And voila, here I am, learning and relearning right beside each one of you to refocus on the mission I set out to accomplish. The goal of getting young and seasoned professionals to help each other. while moderating a panel recently in Washington, D.C. Actually, it wasn't in Washington, D.C., it was in Williamsburg. It was at that conference, a part of a bigger government conference, the ELC-ING thing. Was I on target? Was it close? IAC. IACT. I met a seasoned professional. They're like, yeah, that's it, Misty. Good job. You got that one. I met a seasoned professional who was preparing herself to be led by young professionals, an inevitable possibility in a healthy leadership pipeline. She asked the panel of young professionals, she was nervous. She didn't know how she was going to be led by them successfully. She said she stood up. She was the first person, and she wanted to be the first person to ask the question. So she did. Some of you who were in that audience remember her. She asked, how can I successfully be led by you, to the panel of young professionals? You see, we all really want to just know how to be successful, regardless of the generation. We want to know that what we do matters, that we're contributing to the mission at NASA. And now that we're refocused on the mission, making IT stellar at NASA is well within reach. The language and systems of yesterday are a valuable inheritance and sort of a necessary component to getting to the next level of creativity, innovation, exploration, and discovery, far beyond what we could ever imagined. My great friend and mentor, Dr. Samuel Betances, says, what got us here will not get us there. Making IT stellar at NASA requires that each person in this room question your beliefs about generations, embrace mission-centric thinking and leadership, and to work together toward building a sustainable culture. As another of my friends, Mike McKinley, he's also an incredible mentor, says, together we learn from one another to give to each other the needs we require to continue to learn together. Now, unlike the righteous conversations played out in those two soap operas we talked about in the very beginning, The Young and the Restless and The Seasoned and the Breathless, we can refocus on the mission. Imagine what this year next holds for a NASA IT department capable of inspiring the efforts of every generation. Pulling together all the IT know-how and experience in this room, we can imagine the future is stunning. In a culture that begins, in a culture where every person feels valued and understands how they contribute to the mission, a culture which begins with you and you and you. We can and will sustain this bright dream. Thank you. Thank you. Would you like me to take a few questions?
Maybe one or two.
Who got a question? So you guys are fully equipped to lead across generations now. Awesome. Going once? Yeah, over here. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right in front of me, but you see the lights are...
That's okay. We actually have a question from Twitter, and someone's asking if there are generational tensions that are more prevalent in certain fields, such as engineering, accounting, or IT departments.
So the question is, are there different fields in which there are more friction between young and seasoned? And I would say that no, there's not. There's more friction in an environment where people are concerned about what it is that when they're concerned that what they do doesn't matter, then there's friction. When they don't have somebody who's helping them to bring out the very best in them, or when they're not bringing out the very best in themselves, there's more friction. I don't think that there's any particular industry. Now, you can go from one company to the next within a particular industry, and you'll see radical differences, like Linda Curitan's group. You can look at her group and you can go, wow, that leader gets it. She keeps her eye focused on the vision, rather than letting everything get cloudy and blurry with ego. One more question. You guys are like, Vinny, Vent. I almost called you Vinny because there's some Vinnies in the room. But you're Vent. Since he's up next, we're going to let him come up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me get all this stuff out of your way. Leave the rest of it here for now.